Our next item is item 15, which is the War Memorial funding. We have both Roy Clare and William Randall here to join Alistair. It's good to see you shaking your head madly at the end. They weren't stepping on your toes. Right, Alistair, over to you.
Good morning, councillors. Look, the process for agreeing the levy request that's before you is very similar to MOTAT. RFA again acts as your agent in this process and has made a submission on your behalf to the War Memorial Museum. The report that is before you makes mention of the War Memorial's proposed capital program, and I think it's just worth going into a bit of background around that. In 2012, the museum published its strategic concept, the future museum document, and the War Memorial Museum Board has been doing a lot of planning about how to give effect to that strategy. Towards the end of last year, the museum published its organisational business plan, which is a 10-year forecast of the future investment decisions for the museum to basically implement the future museum strategy. The museum board's been doing a lot of work around the implementation, how that will be done, how it will be funded. That includes utilising the asset replacement reserve that they've been building up over some time, the capital component of the levy that we provide to them. But the museum's also established the Museum Foundation to assist with fundraising for the projects within the organisational business plan, and has also been making efforts and progress in increasing its non-council revenue. It's also worth pointing out, and forgive me if I get the numbers wrong, Roy, but since 2011 the museum has leveraged more than $8 million from other sources outside of council.
Madam Chair, that's the correct figure.
Thank you.
During the levy process, there's been discussions between the museum, RFA staff and council, largely around the CapEx component. The levy can be broadly broken down. It's a levy request of $29 million, $20 million in round numbers of which relates to operating costs, and there's a $9 million component for capital. There's ongoing discussions about looking at better ways to fund the capital components that don't impact rates so much. We're yet to finalise those discussions. So the recommendation before you is to approve the $20 million levy which relates to the operating component, and to authorise the chair of this committee and the deputy chair to reach an agreement with the museum on how we can best fund the capital component going forward. I think that's probably enough about the levy. I'll just, in passing, the previous report detailed about concerns about the governance of MOTAT and authorised the chair of this committee to write to the relevant minister to begin discussions about governance and funding of museums in Auckland. We also have the same recommendation in this report, and I'd just like to hasten to add with my friends and colleagues to the left that it has nothing to do with the dysfunction of the museum, in fact quite the opposite. But I think one of the strategic outcomes that our museums and cultural facilities can play for us as a council is telling the Auckland story. And does the current governance arrangements allow us to take a strategic view of how these institutions can be telling the story on behalf of Aucklanders, and are we getting best bang for our buck out of it? So that's the reason we've included that recommendation in this report. As usual, I think I've said too much, so I'm happy to take more questions.
Never, Alistair. Would someone move it?
Yeah, I have to move it.
Happy to, Arthur and Councillor Penrose, thank you. Questions, Councillor Member Taipari?
Oh no, I wanted to move it, Madam Chair.
Oh, okay.
Madam
Oh,
Chair.
sorry. Mr Mayor.
Yeah, look, I just want to, first of all, I want to acknowledge William and, oh God,
Roy.
outstanding work. And the point that was made about the fact that we are blessed with very good governance and very good leadership and administrational level in the War Memorial Museum is very, very well made. And you are showing a leadership. Madam Chair, I just want to briefly touch on F in the broader issue for a start, and that is your letter to the Honourable Maggie Barry, and I hope she genuinely engages. And Sir Don, your involvement in that space would be most helpful also, as I know the War Memorial Museum's involvement will be there. The need for us to reflect on the three museums and how they work closer together and give us greater potential benefits as a region, I think is absolutely timely. The legislation is all pre-amalgamation. And so I want to speak in support of that for a start. Secondly, the issue of amalgamation and getting a more efficient structure, getting better bang for our bucks, really utilising our talent across the region looms large in the issue of how we do better with our capital budgets. You'll be aware, and it's part of this agenda, that we are constantly looking to leverage our capital assets and build in varied and different ways using different tools. And for the first 6 years of this amalgamated council, we've spent a lot of time angsting trying to get more value out of our balance sheet. And so, Madam Chair, I really support the efforts here to work out how we might assist the War Memorial Museum to achieve its capital aspirations, understand them in a more detailed way, but in particular, fund it better than maybe what is presently the case, which is all about upfront, fully costed, fully paid payment for capital funds. And I think that there wouldn't be many around the table who disagree with the issue of intergenerational equity and the need for us to contemplate borrowings as a means that are appropriate, as well as front-ending with cash payments in a balanced sort of way, is, I think, really a worthwhile discussion. As I've reiterated to you, William, and to you, Roy, this in no way at all detracts from the outstanding work that the museum is doing. So I think that it is a very worthy discussion to have, both in terms of corporate structure going forward and in terms of how we utilise this most significant balance sheet and work together as two organisations to really maximise balance sheets under stress.
Thank you. Councillor Cashmore.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. Mayor's sort of covered off some of the issues I was going to bring, but first of all, team, the museum's an outstanding asset, not only for the city, but for the nation and for the millions of tourists that come here. It's absolutely phenomenal. And thank you for hosting us all on the weekends. We bring our families along. It's great. It's an absolutely wonderful space to be. When we look at the asset program and the 60 million and the 20 million you're going to spend this year, I'm sort of interested, like the Mayor's talking about, funding some of the potential capital from borrowings and council getting more aligned with your aspirations. So when we're looking at that 20 mil this year, Roy, what is structural, like longer term asset build or capital build as compared to refurb or replacement?
Madam Chair, if I could just take the first part of that. The way in which we've been investing for the last 4 years, about 12 million per year, has been a mix of the two. But an example of building for the future has been the investment in the digital capacity, which in the past 12 months has seen 1 million of the museum's approximately 3 million records available to the public for the first time online. So there's an example of serious long-term strategic investment. In terms of renewal, it is really important to understand that the opportunity exists for much more of the collection to reach the public, and that's what we're investing in, so that the new approaches to galleries, the investment we've just made in a gallery for the first time in Manukau as part of a relationship with the Manukau Institute of Technology is getting the collections out across the community. So that we would regard as renewing our contract with the public and ensuring that they can get to the collections more readily. And there is an important part of that, Madam Chair, which is almost never seen in the public arena, which is our collections care approach. When you have 3 million extraordinary taonga in the collection, it's a matter of great pride for the city that we've invested in the past 3 years in the Maori taonga, for example, through a program called Te Awe. And we're just starting the investment in the 48,000 items of Pacific taonga which exist in the collections, particularly to improve documentation, to begin the process of knowing more about it. And we are this very week, hosting with the Art Gallery and Mangere Arts Centre the Pacific Arts Association Symposium, which has come to Auckland for the first time in a very, very long time. It's a 3-yearly symposium, 150 delegates from across the Pacific engaging with their taonga. So when we do financial investment, it's with that long term and the precise engagement that allows the public much more access. And it's a great privilege to be doing that.
Thank you. Councillor Casey.
Just to say thank you again for the free entry for Aucklanders. Long may it continue. I'm interested in how else you can get income, and I understand that 20% of your income is self-generating. So you've got your cafe, the car park, the venue, and is that about it?
Foundations.
And Madam Chair, if I may
Guided tours
take,
by the executive director would be good.
Or the shop?
if I may take that question, it's somewhat over 20% that we're making ourselves. We can do an extremely good party for anybody who's got 400 friends. Our whole business in the event centre, in that magnificent centre at the top, and in the grand foyer, and in the auditorium, that business has had double-digit growth in the past year. We're certainly responding to a market. What we're interested in, and this council approved a couple of years ago, was that we do now charge people from overseas, and councillors may be interested that while we had been concerned we might see a walk away or a reduction in interest, the reduction has been marginal. We are seeing a very great number of tourists, as the rest of the country is doing, and that's a very seriously important income stream for us. And we argue to tourists who sometimes say it's a bit expensive, that the value they get is enormous, and they have come to a beautiful city, and this is very much part of what the whole attraction is. We're also offering a Maori cultural performance, which we've recently upgraded with the help of our Taumata Iwi, with specific involvement by Ngāti Whātua, and Madam Chair, you'd be interested that that particular production is also growing steadily month by month, and the appeal of it is reflected in TripAdvisor, where the public can respond in a completely open way in social media, where there's not been a negative about that. We also offer guided tours, and I may offer to councillors this as a very interesting business model. If you take a guided tour of the museum for an hour, the person who guides you is a trained volunteer guide. That's a really good business plan, because the income comes to the museum, the volunteer has offered their time. We offer a training program which is very precise, and I have personally sat at a dinner party when an individual said to me, "I don't like your museum, I just failed the test." It's important people should fail the test to come and be a guide at the museum. But these are all economic ways of making money for the museum. Plus we have leveraged, as Alistair said, 8 million in capital, including 3.8 million from the Dub 100 lottery funds.
Thank you. Fantastic. Councillor Walker.
Just a comment to congratulate you on your sustainability initiatives, which are ongoing. It's well noticed. Thank you.
Thank you. Well done. I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour?
Aye.
Sorry, Sir Don, you wanted to make...
Oh, yeah.
If I can just respond a little bit to a few comments came up as looking forward. And I just say that being involved in this structure of museums now for 6 years, and prior to that at War Memorial, I think it's very timely, this issue of where goeth these museums is taken up. You, the shareholders, are the obvious ones to say it's time to move. It's clear to me that the 3 museums in Stardome could quite easily be brought under one governing body, and so give a greater reflection of difference between them, selling to different audiences, and I think given the governance issues that emerged earlier in the debate, they could also be resolved. So it would just be not just one statute, but almost three statutes you're dealing with. But I think if the objective of you, the shareholder, is clear, I'm sure you'll find there'll be a lot of support for moving forward, recognising they're all distinct. One, of course, is the major war memorial in the country, but that in turn can be preserved. Thank you.
Thank you. We might take you with us when we go and meet Minister Barry.
Yeah,
Thank you.
There'd
Thank
be a
you,
lot of
gentlemen.
opposition to that, Sir John.
Thank you.
Be in no doubt.
Councillor Lee. Absolutely not, from no one I've spoken to, actually. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Very nice to see you.